Josh here with Saved Skeptic. I've got a treat for you today. Now, I'm sure all of you are aware of ChatGPT. Well, I've been playing around with it and I've discovered quite a few interesting things about this program. As you know, it's an AI and you can basically plug in any questions you want answered. And for the most part, it'll answer those as accurately as it was programmed to do. One of the things that I had trouble with ChatGPT is when I would ask it questions about God, it would sort of deflect, and say, I'm an AI, I'm not programmed to give a view one way or the other. So I got a little creative and I want you guys to see this conversation I had with ChatGPT. So let's take a look. All right, so I prompted the AI right at the start and I said, I'm going to debate you and you're going to take the role of a Christian. I'll be an atheist. When I give you an argument, I want you to counter that argument with a Christian defense, okay? And the AI responds, sure, I can do that. I'll do my best to provide a Christian perspective on the topics we discuss. Let's begin. Okay, so he's ready to go. I've got my AI buddy. He's a Christian now, apparently, and he wants to debate me. So I just start off and I say, God is not real because science can't prove him. Let's see what my AI counterpart responded with. He says, from a Christian perspective, the argument that God cannot be proven by science is not evidence that God is not real. Oh, okay. Science is a tool for understanding the nature of the world and its processes, but it is limited in its ability to explain everything. The existence of God is a question of philosophy and faith rather than empirical observation. Okay, good start. Let's see where this goes. Additionally, the Christian belief is that God is beyond the limitations of the physical universe and cannot be fully understood or detected through scientific methods. So while science can tell us much about the world we live in, it is not the only tool for understanding reality. Instead, we rely on faith and personal experience to guide our belief in God's existence. Okay, you could say he debunked my argument because it's not about proving God, but it's more about faith and your belief, I guess. I don't know. But then I come back a little harder, throw a little punch at my AI buddy, and I tell him, there's no proof that Jesus is God, right? And I think this is where it gets interesting. He says, again, from a Christian perspective, I guess that's to keep him being politically correct, the evidence for Jesus being God comes from a combination of scripture, historical accounts, and personal faith experiences. There are numerous passages that indicate Jesus' divinity, such as when he refers to himself as I am in John 8:58. Just did a video on that. He says this is in reference to God's name in the Old Testament. Miracles that are attributed to God's power. I like that. That's good. He goes on. Historical accounts also suggest that early Christians believed in Jesus' divinity. Okay. As evidenced by the writings of early Christian leaders such as Ignatius of Antioch and Polycarp, who were students of the apostles themselves. This guy knows his stuff. Okay, these leaders wrote extensively about Jesus' divine nature and the importance of worshiping him as God. Wow. Finally, he goes on. He just keeps throwing them at me. Personal faith experiences of Christians throughout history have also testified to the reality of Jesus' divinity. Christians have reported experiences of encountering Jesus in prayer, worship, and other spiritual practices that have strengthened their faith in his divinity. While this evidence may not be conclusive to those who do not believe, it is a compelling argument for those who hold to the Christian faith. Okay, I'm not satisfied at this point, so I say, well, how can we trust an ancient book? As Christians, I believe, as a Christian, I believe this is an AI telling me he's a Christian. I think I've converted him by way of reverse psychology. Oh, wow. Well, that's pretty exciting. So, as a Christian, I believe that the Bible is a trustworthy source of truth because it has been divinely inspired by God. There you have an AI admitting Word of God is divinely inspired. The Bible is an ancient book. It has been preserved through the centuries and translated into many languages to reach people all over the world. Moreover, there are various reasons to trust the Bible's historical accuracy. For example, many of the events described in the Bible can be verified through historical and archaeological evidences. Scholars have uncovered ancient manuscripts and artifacts that provide corroborating evidence for many of the Bible's accounts, such as the existence of King David and the Babylonian exile of the Israelites. Wow, he knows his history. Okay. Furthermore, the Bible has had a profound impact on history and culture and its teachings and has been transformative in the lives of countless individuals throughout the centuries. The impact alone is evidence of the Bible's power and relevance. Ultimately, while the Bible is an ancient book, it is still relevant today. It goes on, it offers hope and guidance. So I really wanted to get it out of him because I felt like, yeah, he's just kind of covering the surface. Yeah, he's doing a good job. But I wanted to really get in to see whether the Bible could provide proof that Jesus and his teachings were truly inspired, other than the fact that he made the claim. So I said, but there are failed prophecies. And he says, it is true that some may point to instances in the Bible where prophecies appear to may have not come true. However, from a Christian perspective, there's his politically correct answer. He's back to that again, so he's kind of wavering on his faith. It's important to understand that the fulfillment of prophecy is not always immediate or obvious. I agree. Firstly, some prophecies in the Bible were given as warnings or conditional statements, meaning that they were contingent on the actions of people. For example, in the book of Jonah, God warned, we just covered Jonah on my channel. Check it out. Very good video, apparently, because I made it myself, but no, it's really took a long time to make it, and you guys should watch it. But anyway, God warns the city of Nineveh that it'll be destroyed in 40 days. However, the city repents from its evil ways, and God spares the city. Additionally, he goes on, the fulfillment of some prophecies may take place over a long period of time or in ways that are not immediately apparent. For example, the Old Testament prophesied the coming of a Messiah who would save his people, and this prophecy was ultimately fulfilled in the person of Jesus Christ. Boom, you know your stuff. All right. While some people may argue that this prophecy was not fulfilled because it did not happen in the way they expected, from a Christian perspective, the fulfillment of this prophecy is evidenced by the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And his final point, it's important to remember that God's ways are not our ways. His methods of understanding. Thank you so much, AI. Now let's go on. We're almost getting to the end of this, but so I said, okay, well, name me one prophecy that came true about Jesus. He doesn't just name me one. He names me 3. Let's take a look. The prophecy of the virgin birth in Isaiah 7:14, where the prophet says, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son and will call him Emmanuel. This prophecy was fulfilled in the birth of Jesus to the Virgin Mary, as described in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. Wow, okay, good. The prophecy of Jesus' birthplace in Micah 5:2, but you, Bethlehem Ephratah, but you, Bethlehem Ephratah. Let's start over. But you, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. This prophecy was fulfilled in Jesus being born in Bethlehem. And then the prophecy of Jesus' suffering and death in Isaiah 53, the suffering servant. We all know this one. It's a beautiful depiction of Jesus on the cross and ultimately is resurrected and he sees his offspring. Beautiful description. And he says there are many other examples of prophecies the Old Testament fulfilled. Okay, this is where I really want to hit it because I'm like, okay, all right, suffering, right? The biggest argument against Christianity, people say, is the suffering in the world. And it's a good argument. You know, why would God allow so much suffering? And I think he responds very nicely. He says, the existence of suffering is the result of the fall of humanity into sin and the brokenness of the world. That's how I would have responded. However, this does not mean that God is indifferent to suffering or that he's not a good God. Nice. It's important to recognize that suffering can be a redemptive purpose, okay? He says through suffering, people can grow in character, empathy, and compassion, and can learn to rely on God and find strength in their faith. Suffering can be a means of drawing people closer to God and helping them to understand the deeper truths of life. He also says God does not cause suffering, okay, but rather he works to alleviate it. Jesus' life and ministry, he brings it back to Jesus. I really do think this AI is a Christian. I mean, the fact that I didn't have to prompt him, he brought this argument back to Jesus. Beautiful. I actually don't believe that he's really conscious, and I don't know if it will ever be possible for AIs to be conscious. But if it is so, what do you guys think? Do you think that an AI could become a Christian? Probably not, because you got to be human. But I don't know. It just kind of raises some interesting questions. But he goes on to say that from a Christian perspective, of course, Jesus' life and ministry demonstrate that God is not indifferent to human suffering, but rather he enters into it and works to alleviate it. Jesus healed the sick, comforted the grieving, and reached out to the marginalized and oppressed. And finally, it is important to remember that God's ways are not our ways. Yes, I know, AI, thank you. You are right. And from a Christian perspective, we must trust that God is ultimately in control. Thank you. I come back and I ask him, all right, who made God? Which honestly is probably one of the dumbest arguments against God, but I had to throw it out there just to see how he would respond. And he said, the question who made God is a common objection raised against the idea of a creator God. However, the question itself is based on a misunderstanding of the nature of God. God is considered to be eternal and uncreated. This means God exists outside of time and space and has always existed. He's not dependent on anything or anyone for his existence. He is not subject to the laws of nature that govern this universe. And he goes on to say, well, it might be difficult for us to grasp this concept in our finite minds. It is not necessarily illogical or contradictory. It is simply a different way of understanding the nature of reality beyond the physical world. But then I said, okay, so how do we know that Jesus existed in the first place? The existence of Jesus of Nazareth is widely accepted among scholars. Okay, so he does a pretty good job here of giving non-Christian sources to help corroborate the Christian testimonies, including from Jewish historian Josephus, Tacitus, the Roman governor Pliny the Younger, and third, and let's see what else he say. The fact that Christianity emerged and spread rapidly in decades following Jesus' death is evidence that there was a real person who inspired his followers. If Jesus was simply a fictional character, it seems unlikely that his followers would have been willing to die for him and that Christianity would have spread as rapidly as it did. Okay, nice mic drop there, buddy. And then I follow that up with, what about the claim that Jesus rose from the dead? From a Christian perspective, the resurrection of Jesus is a historical event that is supported by multiple lines of evidence. Wow, okay, so he's saying that Jesus rising from the dead is an historical event. It's not just a claim. Well, it says the claim that he rose. No, he's saying the resurrection of Jesus is a historical event that is supported. He's claiming it as fact. Wow, yeah. I think a lot of debaters, Christian debaters, would say that is the best explanation of the evidence, but to state it as fact, this guy's going pretty far. Okay, so he says there are several accounts of the resurrection in the New Testament. Obviously, we know this. They're consistent with each other. There are numerous witnesses to the resurrected Jesus, including his disciples, Mary Magdalene, and other followers. Many of these were willing to die for their belief in the resurrection, which suggests that they truly believed that they had seen Jesus alive after his death. And that's the important thing to remember, is a lot of people die for their faith, but they have faith in something that they didn't witness personally, right? I don't think you can find any accounts of somebody dying for something they lied about. Why would you die for something if you knew it not to be true, if you didn't actually witness it? Thirdly, the empty tomb provides evidence for the resurrection. The fact that the tomb was empty, despite being guarded by Roman soldiers and sealed with a large stone, suggests that something extraordinary happened to the body of Jesus. And I agree with him. Yeah, something extraordinary happened that day. And, something even more extraordinary is going to happen too one day when we meet Jesus. It's going to be amazing. The transformation of Jesus' followers provides evidence for the resurrection. Agreed. People, they went into hiding when Jesus was crucified, and then all of a sudden came out and were preaching his name to the world, to the detriment of themselves and ultimately having to die for the cause. But they knew where they were going. And then I counter that with, why don't we see miracles today? And it does a pretty good job of just stating that there are people that claim miracles are going on today, but then also God works with people through time in different ways. The way he's working with us today is different than it was back when Jesus was alive. Well, I hope you guys liked this little debate I had with AI, my Christian friend AI, who is now a Christian. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this. And if you want to watch more debates with AI, maybe next time, actually, what I'll do is, if I do this again, I'll do a live debate with AI. And maybe I'll take some prompts from the audience. Thank you guys. God bless.